Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Merrimack School Board this Monday evening, November 17th, 2014. Would you all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And that takes us to item number 2 on tonight's agenda, approval of the November 3rd, 2014 minutes. Is there a motion? Made by Vice Chair Barnes, seconded by Mr. Powell. Any amendments? Mr. Powell.
I just have a couple. On page 10, line 413, the word site should be S-I-T-E and not the vision site. And then I had, no, I answered my own question on that. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schneider?
I just had a couple of clarifying ones on the section on the track discussion. A lot of these boil down to be clarifying on exactly what we mean when we talk about a 6-lane track versus an 8-lane track. So for example, on page 2, line 88, option 2 is replacing the 6-lane track and adding 2 more straightaway lanes, making an 8-lane track on the front stretch or something like that. Yep. Just so people know we're not talking about 8 lanes all the way around the track. Similarly, on page 3, the section starting on line 112, it talks about the NCAA USA track and field recommends school run 8-person finals. And I think specifically here we're talking about for which needs to be done on an 8-lane track for sprint distant events. I think so that we want to make sure that it isn't 8 lanes all the way around. It's just 8 lanes on that front stretch for like the sprinter events.
Which line was that again, Andy?
Started on line 122, so that would have been, or not on 112, excuse me. So that would have been like 113. Needs to be done on an 8-lane track. So we just add some clarification on this, the straightaway we're talking about. And then finally on page 4, line 158, Vice Chair Barnes asked about the difference between a 6-lane oval track and it should be a 6-lane track with an 8-lane straightaway. Just to be clear so everybody knows what we're talking about. Finally, the other question I had, and this isn't really, I don't remember the answer. On line 145 on the same page, it says Mr. Snell responded that it was 2011 when Merrimack hosted its last track meet. I believe it should have said state track meet because there are smaller track meets that occur during the year, because he says, add additional, right now Merrimack hosts between 3 and 5 meets as well as a Merrimack Invitational per year. So I think it was a state.
Yes, we're getting confirmation.
We're getting the nod, okay.
We're
great.
Fortunate to have him here.
Cool. So I think if we just say 2011 hosted a state track meet, that would clarify that section. And that's it.
Great. Ms. Guglielmi.
Okay, I have a couple. Similar to what Andy said on page 2, line 86, 87, option 1 is replacing the track, maybe rephrasing it. It's kind of as is, it is, as a 6-lane, so maybe you're saying replacing the track as is, period. And then line 90 on the same page, it references Brian Cornish, maybe a little more about who he is, a service provider to the district, subject matter expert, something with some context. And then page 3, line 99, about leaving the asphalt going and going back on top with the newer system would be very risky. And then something to the effect of Mr. Cornish recommends laying new asphalt when doing or when completing the track. And then down on line 101, where it says inadequate drainage for the site should all be carefully planned to protect the track. Same page, page number 3, line 114. This would enable Merrimack to host even more track meets should the district select that option. Page 4, line 143, really minor detail, just a period after be held with the new track. Page 1, line 178 on the same page. It may be somewhat messy, but it can be done without significantly disturbing the track. As it was talking about being able to do work on the field. And page 7, line 312. If the 6-lane track is becoming obsolete, this is referencing my position, she may be in favor of the 8-lane straightaway. And then on page 11, line 460, or 461, she added that it makes sense to partner with the council on how to move forward on the use of this property and other appropriate items that affect the community. So the point being that it wasn't just about the tennis courts, that I think it's good to be collaborative where it makes sense. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other amendments? Vice Chair Barnes.
All but one was caught earlier, so we are going to page 4, line 150. And we need a sentence added. Principal Johnson and I were discussing, back and forth, obviously, the kind of revenues that could be gained. And one thing it was shared that sales from the Booster Club go back to support the track program. Additional meets will assist in fundraising.
Okay.
And I think that's all I have.
All right. And I had only one other that hadn't been caught, and it's just a clarifying statement. On page 12, line 521, I think there's two things that can be added to this sentence. It says he went before the council at the school board's request, if we could add at the school board's request, who understood the situation, and the council, if we could, took action, so we can be clear about who took action. And other than that, I have no other amendments. So with that, we will put the minutes of the November 3rd, 2014 meeting to a vote. All those in favor of accepting as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you. That now takes us to item number 3 on tonight's agenda, public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board. All we ask is that you come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone looking to address the board under public participation? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move to item number 4, acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000. Business Administrator Matt Chevenel.
Thank you. This evening we have a gift to Merrimack High School. The name of the donor is Scholastic Sports Marketing, Inc. The amount of the gift is $500, and the purpose is to support the U.S. Army and promote football and also our armed services. So that is a gift to Merrimack High School to promote the football program.
Thank you.
signify by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. That motion carries 5-0-0. For the fun part. That takes us to item number 5, recognition of Merrimack High School girls. My microphone is off. What I said was, that takes us to the fun part of the evening. Item number 5, recognition of Merrimack High School girls volleyball team as Division I state champions. I would invite to the table Principal Ken Johnson, coach and educator Ms. Tammy Lambrew, and the student athletes. Congratulations, girls. Here's where we need to use that teamwork.
Six on the bench. Six on the bench. Yeah, take our booties into consideration.
That's the way.
No.
Well, thank you very much. You know, I realize that we are living in times when they say it's not all about the winning. But there are moments when the achievements of a single athlete, an exceptional coach, or a team are so extraordinary, so rare, you just have to stop and take notice. And such is the case with this year's women's volleyball team at Merrimack High School. Just a couple of facts. This team went undefeated, 22-0. In all reality, they were 66-2 in sets, establishing a new NHIAA record. Jen and Joe Coffey were selected to the first team Division I All-State, and Jen is the Division I Player of the Year and a finalist for Gatorade Player of the Year. Coach Tammy Lambrew was selected as the Division I Coach of the Year. Now, our athletic director, Eric Sabian, wanted me to say a couple of words on his behalf, and he describes this team as wildly talented, a team of the greatest character who has done Merrimack and Merrimack High School especially proud. For me, I was able to say over the intercom, and I say before you tonight, this is a team of historic proportions and may indeed be the greatest women's volleyball team ever assembled in NHIAA history. And so with that, I give you Coach Lambrew.
Thank you. It's been quite a ride this year. These girls are unbelievable. I can't tell you enough. We knew they were talented from day one when they came in. And the last 4 years, their freshman year, these seniors saw this team lose in the state championship. The next 2 years, we lost in the semifinals, and they made a vow to be the ones to bring home the banner for us. And no doubt since day one, we knew it was going to happen, full confidence in them. I was almost nervous that I wasn't nervous for the playoffs, but a tremendous support from the administration, the student body, all pulled together, and it was, if you got to see a game, it was truly unbelievable, the sportsmanship and how pumped up this whole community was for this team. And they deserve it. They worked hard. They're a great group of girls, and I don't think I'm ever going to have a team as dedicated and as much of a team as this team has been. So I'm excited for them, my seniors. I'm praying they all go on to play. One of them, Jen Coffey, did sign her letter of intent to play on a full scholarship, volleyball scholarship to Quinnipiac University. She is the first one in Merrimack High School history to do that. So it's been a good ride. It's been a good ride. So
I'm going to
thank
step
you.
out of this picture and let the team stand behind their coach. Ladies, come forward.
I don't know. Does someone want to sit?
Brian, do you want to come around, get a picture?
Jen, sit. Someone sit. Sit with each other. Yeah. Okay, good.
Sure.
Okay.
There's a
These
photo
are our two-
opportunity
These are our
here.
two captains. Do you girls, this is our co-captains, Caitlin Paulson and Jen Coffey. Do you girls have anything to add?
I can't really follow that up.
Well, maybe the board would have some comments of congratulation and perhaps some questions. So why don't I open that up? Vice Chair Barnes.
For starters, raise your hand if you're a senior. Well, so there's still, you've got some backfill. This is fantastic. And just to make a comment, that saw Principal Johnson brought his clipboard like the coach. Yeah, so that was pretty good stuff. So how many of you, I guess, have been only on the team first year? Excellent. So you really still have a good distribution. So I played JV volleyball back in the time before you were even considered as people. So but I know it's a sport that takes a lot of stamina, your fingertips ache by the end of your day. So you setters, I really, the bumpers have it a little easier, I'm not going to lie to you, but the setters, that's tough. And great job. Obviously, we're very proud of you. I'm glad this town got to see a true championship spirit with you guys. And we look forward to next year because there's still a lot of talent left behind, even when you seniors graduate out. So good luck with your offers from your colleges seniors. And obviously, remember, to mention Merrimack as the powerhouse of volleyball in New Hampshire. So good stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Schneider.
Well, having been in Merrimack for a very long time and going to school when Merrimack almost won a basketball championship, I know imagine what it's like to actually achieve that, so this is really good. As a side note, my nephew, he's like in his 40s, his daughter and daughters play for a high school volleyball team in Missouri that has won their state championship a couple of years, so he's been bragging all over the internet. So I took a picture and I'll post something to say, see, I don't have a child in it, but I'm on the school board with it. So this is great. Congratulations. You guys did a really good job this year.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Gualiumi.
Just a very sincere congratulations. Great job.
Thank you. Can I add something?
Please.
Okay. Not only were these girls tremendous on the court, off the court as well, we always get recognized. We always have over a 3.0 cumulative GPA for
You
these
anticipated
girls.
my question.
Yes. It's always over a 3.0 cum average for the team. Last year we were 3.4. We'll see what this year brings, but I have a feeling it's going to be higher than that. Not only that, but the kids this year, we've always done a cancer awareness game. And back in the day, we used to raise money for cancer, the American Cancer Society. Last year, we decided, and it was a girl's decision, to find a Merrimack family that was struggling with the financial burden that cancer can bring. So we found a local family in Merrimack. Last year, we raised money and gave the money to them directly. This year, same deal. Unfortunately, the mother could not attend the game because she was in the hospital, but her husband and her 3 young children were at the game. And Jackie Petroselli spoke about them to the audience, and then all the money raised through 50-50 and concessions all went to help this family. So for me, that's a big test, not only as athletes, but as true characters and leaders in the community, which I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that as well.
Thank you. You actually anticipated my question regarding the academics. We spend a lot of our time and focus on making sure that we are delivering an education for you that's going to enable you to succeed in life, whether you go on to college or not. And I don't think we talk enough about the importance that athletics has in actually doing that. You set goals, you worked hard, you supported each other, you supported the community. Those are all skills that make people successful in life. And the fact that you did what you did on the court as well as off the court and in the classroom. We're proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of those academics, we'll now move to item number 6 on tonight's agenda, Science Curriculum Update. I'll turn this over to Dr. Mark McLaughlin to introduce our esteemed educators who are joining him for this presentation.
Thank you very much. So, joining us tonight from left to right are Ashley Meehan, Allison McGuire, Rebecca Vandenberg, Keith Tanner, Bill Morris, John Snell, Jeff Karen, and Joan McMahon. Missing tonight, they just couldn't be here, but we want to mention because they're major contributors, are Jamie Cordero and Patrick Scott. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who's going to begin his comments and then share it with everyone else. I would just like to say that I'm so happy to have this team with you tonight. They've been with us for the last few years, providing you with updates on the work they've done. This is one of the most independent professional groups of people working on behalf of our students, and they're doing great, great work to bring us an updated state-of-the-art science curriculum. So I just would like to share my thanks to them for the great work that they've done so consistently over the last few years. Bill?
So I guess my first thought is how do we top the girls, right? So I guess an analogy would be I'm sitting up here, sort of like the coach of this group here, and I would certainly say that this is a champion science curriculum team, right? And I speak very from the heart to say that this group works with a passion. They work diligently, and it's a pleasure to work with them, including those that can't be with us tonight. The Science Curriculum Committee continues to meet bi-monthly during the 2014-15 school year, and they're working on revising the Merrimack Science Curriculum, most recently focusing on the Earth and Space Science strand. In addition, we met for 3 full days this summer. Work sessions continue to be focused, productive, and with rich professional dialogue. Work sessions consisted of teacher representatives from all buildings and all levels. We continue to feel that the implementation of this revised curriculum should be supported by our current budget levels. During this draft phase, teachers receive and will continue to receive professional development to support the new concepts that they have begun or will teach. As the Science Curriculum Review Committee continues to progress through the review process for all the strands, professional development will focus on such areas as lesson plan design and inquiry. The committee continues to follow current trends in science education at the state and national level and how they might affect our curriculum. And we feel confident that the curriculum we are creating can absorb any of these trends. In terms of this year's implementation of the Earth Space Science strand, by the end of 6th grade, students should be able to know that the Earth and its parts have developed over long periods of time and continue to change. Additionally, students should know that the Earth is a distinct part of a solar system which is part of a larger universe. One activity that a student may complete would focus on the movement of the Earth. Students may track earthquakes that are occurring around the Earth to draw conclusions about the Ring of Fire, possibly utilizing the Merrimack Public Library and their seismograph to make real-world connections. Several of this team had an opportunity to participate in training this summer with the library staff. Some possible lessons include hands-on inquiry and proper use of scientific equipment that is used to measure various processes. And at this time, members of the committee will share some more specifics.
Last year, our focus was on creating a draft of the Earth and Space Science strand. We followed the same process that we used for the life and physical science strands. We developed 3 enduring understandings that span K through 8. And in the curriculum, you'd find this on the first page of any unit. We developed units for grades K through 6. We recognized that elementary teachers needed more background knowledge and concrete examples regarding Earth and space science. So over the summer, we decided to invite Sally Agel, an 8th grade teacher, to give us some of her insights on the Earth and space science strand. Over the summer, we also created student-friendly language for teachers to post in their classrooms.
We continue to work towards consistency on the depth of knowledge required at each grade level using our performance indicator terms. These terms are used throughout all grade levels and strands. Last year, we added the term research to all of our strands as an additional method of scientific inquiry.
In years past, we've really been trying to make this a fluid process, as you know, coming to you with updates, and we've been doing that with teachers along the way, allowing them time to give input through every piece of the process and on the drafts that we've presented to them. So this past spring, we elicited feedback on the piloting of the the life and physical science strands, and using that feedback, we made revisions over the summer. This fall, we updated their binders and redistributed them to the staff K to 6, and we used our staff meetings to update the teachers on any of the changes. So now they have a complete curriculum K to 6 with all 3 strands. They're piloting and trying, and in the spring, we plan to try and elicit general feedback on the entire curriculum and the way it's working, time management, if it's feasible to do the things within a year, and also individual feedback for each strand.
We've continued to keep the administration and all buildings informed of our progress. After each meeting, we formulate an email and send that out. All of the work that we produced is available to all staff on our district shared network drive. And as Bill had said earlier, a few members of the team had a chance this summer to attend a training at the Merrimack Public Library, and we found it really informative and are excited to find ways to implement the technology throughout our classrooms.
So this year, our focus will be to continue to elicit feedback from the K-6 teachers and make revisions to all the strands as needed and finalize the K-6 curriculum draft. Also to compile a list of resources and support materials for teachers to use in each unit, and to dialogue with the middle and high school teachers and incorporate the curriculum work that's been taking place at those schools, that scales at the middle school and competencies at the high school, to decide what format that work will take in our K-12 curriculum document. Over the last few years at the middle school, teachers have been developing unit templates and common assessments. The enduring understandings for the life science strand are all covered in 7th grade, and the enduring understandings for the earth space science strand are all covered in 8th grade. Each grade level will create a curriculum document consistent with the format of our K-6 document.
And at the high school, we've been working on a competency initiative, and the teachers have been developing competencies for each course and assessments to go with them. This is based on the current state science curriculum frameworks.
Thank you on behalf of the teachers and students for providing us the time to address you. We appreciate how supportive the board has been of the science curriculum and instruction and the science budgets over the years. Are there any questions?
Well, I will pose the question again. Are there questions or comments from the board? Vice Chair Barnes.
I know when I was a couple years ago on PERC, I think you were doing like a mid-level, and I believe you were there. Yes. I think some of the things you're talking about were terminology, using common terminology, so that it just evolves the definition. Can you give some examples of how that works with the K-6 final, as you're finalizing that K-6 platform, some of the areas where you worked on those?
One of the things the thing that I talked about was the performance indicators. At the beginning of our curriculum, we have a document where we're able to list the specific terms that we put into the indicators throughout the document. So the teachers can reference exactly what depth of knowledge they're supposed to go through. We have an investigation that we ask of them to do in almost every physical science unit. And now we put in that research piece because we really felt like to get at scientific inquiry, we needed some more terms that were going to have kids actually doing science, not just learning the basic knowledge. So that's kind of how we explain it.
We have terms such as recall, which lets a teacher know that it's been in a previous grade level. So it's information they've already should have heard, maybe didn't retain to a certain level, but they've at least heard some of the terminology in the background. And then it works its way up. So that's kind of the common piece we tried to weave through every strand.
And I know John had mentioned that the state standards for high school are kind of what we follow for our guidelines, and obviously makes total sense. Then there's the middle, which is the middle school. I mean, what's, I guess, the next evolution to marry the two? Because it seems like we're perfecting this, and you're kind of hanging out there waiting for, to take the baton.
That's what we're hoping to do this year, because middle school's been simultaneously doing our own teacher-led effort to focus our curriculum and make sure it's consistent from teacher to teacher. So we've basically completed all of our units at that level, and the task now is I'm working on 7th and Joan's working on 8th to translate what we've done into the format of the document that we've used K to 6. So we're actually going to bring drafts of that to our next meeting with this group and try to.
Part of our work has kind of been similar to the high school in that we've, as a group, been making common formative assessments and soon to work on summative formative assessments so that we have something to judge whether the kids are getting it, whether they're not getting it, what we need to change and implement more.
Well, John Snell pop quiz, I hear, can fix all of that, right? Maybe. Excellent. That's actually, we definitely talk about how we were formulating that, but middle school, you're definitely the next step in evolution, and how are you readying for the baton? And that sounds like you have a great plan in place, so wonderful. Those are my questions.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? I would ask if the board is interested in seeing where the curriculum stands at this point in time. Is there an easy place you could point them?
Do you have access to the Common Drive?
Probably not.
So I could create a packet and get it to Mark, and then Mark can make copies for everybody.
Wonderful.
Yep.
That would be great. The approach that you're taking, not to throw out a science term, but I think it's important not to take a big bang approach with this, but rather to move and make incremental progress, right? The work that was done K through 6 to establish a foundation and a template, right, that now work that's been going on in parallel can now feed into and move forward, I think is exactly the way to go. Because you've been learning what works, what doesn't work through the process, right? You've been getting iterative feedback, not unlike a formative assessment. And so, in the end, I believe you and the district and our students will have a better product for the approach that you've taken. So we appreciate all of the hard work. And you're coming here tonight to share with us your progress. Thank you. And that takes us to item number 7 on tonight's agenda, summary of Merrimack School District performance on 2014 NECAP Science Assessment. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you. So I'm just passing out for you now something that I think will help to illustrate tonight my comments. So I'll just wait till you've all gotten them. What I'm passing out is a two-sided sheet of paper. On the one side are the percentage scores for 2013-14. In red, what you see are the state results, and in black are the Merrimack School District results. And what I'd like to do is ask you to flip to the other side, if you would, for just a second, because I think some of the comments on the back help to describe in a little bit more detail what it is you're seeing. So the first thing that I would tell you is that the current NECAP assessment relies on the results of 4 domains, and they are physical science, earth, space science, life science, and inquiry. Those are the 4 domains that are assessed on the science NECAP, and it is scores from those domains that produce the result. It's important for everyone to know that the inquiry domain represents the single greatest influence on the science NECAP results, and so of the 4 domains, that is worth 30% of a student's overall result. Oh, okay. That's okay. The inquiry domain represents 30% of the total results, and then all the other 3 domains represent just a tad over 23%. It's also important to say that the science domain subscores, because of the way that they are calculated, cannot be compared from year to year. So in other cases, when I've come before you to talk about reading or math, I provide you with a multi-year descriptor. That does not work in this case, and the reason is, well, I'll just point out here, unlike achievement level and scale scores, these scores are reported as raw scores and have not been linked across years and placed on the same scale. It's also important to point out that each category of the 4 domains doesn't have enough questions within them there's not a sufficient number of points within each category to equate these subscores from one year to the next. So it's just important to know why specifically I'm not reporting multiple years, but rather just 1 year. Also, I want you to know that the achievement level cut scores, so what I mean by that is each performance indicator, proficient with distinction, proficient, below proficient, or substantially below proficient, they were established, those cut points, the distinction between one category and the other, are called a cut point. Those cut points were developed in 2008 and stay the same right now, though the assessment itself is changing. The cut points have stayed the same. If you flip, and then I'll talk about the domain tasks in a minute, but if you flip back, I think you'll see a result that we would say is relatively consistent with the state. At our best performance is at 4th grade. There is a significant dip in performance at the middle school, which tracks along state lines as well. And then there is a significant uptick in performance at the 2 highest categories at the high school. I don't think anybody would say that the results are the kind of results that we are hoping to see in the future. What you will recognize from the work of our committee tonight is a focus on inquiry. I think you've seen that in the curriculum work that they're developing, there is an embedded focus on scientific inquiry in each of the domain strands and in each of the components of each strand that they're working on. And that's really where our attention needs to be. In years past, we, as with so many other content areas, we've talked about knowing versus understanding. In the current iteration of our curriculum, the emphasis is still there. We are shifting to a scientific inquiry-based approach to curriculum, which is exactly like what we've been talking about for years in math and reading. There has to be an application component. Otherwise, a student just knows things and can't put them into a real-world context. So if you flip back to the other side of the page, what I'm hoping for you to see are just examples of the grade 4, grade 8, and grade 11 inquiry tasks that our students were asked to complete, just an example of those. The curriculum that we're developing is very aligned to the tasks, the grade level tasks that you see here. So our hope is that as we transition to the new standards and our curriculum is commensurate with that we're going to see increase in the performance of our students in the inquiry domain. I will point out that in the other 3 domains, our performance is at or above the state level, and we do dip as a result of the inquiry. So it's a clear marker for our curriculum committee about the task that we need to be about. So I'm happy to address any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Vice Chair Barnes.
Mark, I know that we've talked about, we've had our science people here, Science Olympiad, our biodiesel group. We're kind of thought of as science people here quite often. So I guess the question is it an area of science that maybe isn't where we're best known for, that we're getting tested on? Or, because, we're beating colleges in Science Olympiad, so this kind of stuff, the top end at least, surprises me.
Yep, I agree. So we always talk about science NECAP or any NECAP as being one data point. So, and then the question is, based on other assessment results, is there some kind of triangulation? Is there consistency? There's not a lot of consistency at the moment with other results that we have and NECAP. These are points in time, and it is what it is. So the other thing that I'd say is that our current delivery of curriculum, because the presentation that you had tonight isn't an approved document yet, so it's not operational, so our current is becoming unaligned with the new assessments, if you can. So that's the reason why, because the new assessments are getting more and more focused on inquiry, and the current delivery doesn't sufficiently address that. And that's one of the reasons that we're so gratified by the work of this team to begin to really do that. So what I can tell you, other than anecdotally, what I can tell you is that I think we recognize in all content areas the need to focus on inquiry. We talk about literary analysis as the equivalent in language arts, application in mathematics. That's the trending, and it makes sense. I think it's appropriate, and that's where we need to continue to evolve, which is what our science curriculum team and the competencies at the high school are really about. So we're at a mismatch point, I think.
And I guess the question is, knowing that you are developing this and strategizing this, knowing you have to roll it out, and knowing that you have students kind of in the curve of the old style of learning and going into a new vision of learning, would 5 years, 7 years be a realistic time where we're going to see these as, stronger numbers? Because we are going to focus more on inquiry with the way we're doing our math, our English, because inquiry, it's like every time we talk about assessment, inquiry is what the story comes back to. English and math as well, every year.
That's correct. I can't, it's hard to put a time frame on that. I would certainly hope that before 5 and 7 years we'd see, it's hard to say because NECAP now is going away, and so there won't be a point of comparison anymore. So there'll be sort of like the establishment of a new baseline. And so it's just going to be hard to draw conclusions for a while, also because the assessment itself will be different, and that is another point of non-comparison. So there are lots of kind of what ifs, but what I can tell you is that across the board we have committed in all our content areas to this notion of application. We've talked about it a lot at the board's table, that what it means to know something is different from what it means to understand something, and the traditional approach has been to know it. So you know your facts, your math facts automatically and fluently, and that's an important component. But if that's the only thing you can do, it's not enough. And so that's consistently what our district has been working on for the last several years. So, and then the curriculum, the science curriculum is in the middle of that process as well.
Right, and that was really the genesis of my question, knowing that we are going to change our assessments so that to be able to measure, this is, to me, I mean, can you assume it dead data because you can't see growth over it?
Right.
So to me, it's the Latin of data, although we do offer Latin.
Right.
But needless to say, I mean, what I'm looking at is when can we start to look at a trend line, and when can we be able to measure it? So I think 5 and 7 years is actually more realistic if we are changing to 0.1, you know, our assessments.
Mm-hmm.
But I take it to that end, we're going to be focusing more on inquiry and evaluation and analysis in our curriculum.
Right. Correct.
So, and we say it every year, and you said it, I just want to reinforce it, this is a snapshot. Colleges come to our students and ask them to join because we do have good curriculum around science as well. So our biodiesel program is something that brought in a presidential candidate because he wanted to know more about, you know, what we're doing here that, you know, is so impressive to even the collegiate level. So I don't want people to panic, but I just also don't want to take this number and hang it out in the wind and say this is what it is and is something you should look at next year, see if it got better.
Right, absolutely
So,
right.
And that's, I really want to make sure that that's being reinforced out there.
Yep, that's a very important, and along those lines, it is by far the smallest in number of items of the assessments. So results from that, it's hard to extrapolate, you know. In any event, that's just a fact.
And will the new assessment have more content to it, I guess is my question?
It's not possible to say at the moment. I think that's true. What it's definitely heading into, however many items it represents, will all be significantly focused on inquiry, as these tasks are beginning to show you they are. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
So one thing that struck me in listening to your explanation is it's obviously the common thread where we have sort of deficiencies or challenges, I guess, is around inquiry across all the different areas. I don't know whether you've thought of this, but is it possible as we go through the year, and then when you look at things like August Academy, is it possible to look at ways to leverage styles and methodologies of inquiry across disciplines? So as you look at math and science and English, it'd be real interesting to find out, because obviously a skill that you learn in one area, you should be able to build on to another. So I would hope that all the disciplines together might be working towards inquiry and how to feed off of each other. So whether that's something we could figure, either get a readout at some point of how that's happening or whether there's going to be a focus on it, I think that would be good, because it would then help to address one area across all and maybe get some more traction. She says 5 to 7 years. I challenge it to be less than that, because yes, you could see trending going from elementary to middle or middle to high. 5 to 7 would start getting somebody that's gone across all three sort of in that scope. I think if we do it right, we can start seeing a difference as you go across one jump rather than two. So maybe this is just a challenge to the district to see if we can make it potentially more aggressive. But I definitely like to see sort of that cross-pollination, if you will, around inquiry, around the different disciplines.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. That some of that has actually begun with our August Academy, but I hear what you're saying in terms of ramping that up even more. So absolutely.
Great point. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Chevenel, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I've been, let me step out of my role here for a second. I've been getting into some quantitative and qualitative data analysis in some of the courses I've been taking. And Mark in this presentation has made some pretty powerful statements that I don't want to go unnoticed. When you read the words, inquiry domain represents the single greatest influence on the NECAP results. Science domain subscores cannot be directly compared from one year to the next, even within a grade level. Unlike achievement levels and scaled scores, these scores are reported as raw scores and have not been linked across years and placed on the same scale. what can you do with this, given these anomalies? If I would to put together something like this as a presentation to any one of my professors and tried to draw conclusions from it, they would be aghast. I'm telling you that right now. So thank you for letting me step out of my comfort zone here and express my opinion. Thanks.
And you got credit for half a credit hour there.
Yes, I did.
Thank you. I'm not going to say anything that hasn't already been said, but as I look at this, this is one of those perennial discussions in my years on the board, and it boils down to the fact that we wish these scores were higher. We understand where we are within the state, that some of this has to do with how the tests are structured. But I think the more important thing, and it was hit upon in these conversations, is that as we look at these, whether we can see a trend or not, as we can on some of the others, that's helpful. But the real import to us is really to understand what is it about how we're teaching, what we're focusing on, what competencies are we stressing. That's really the important piece. And I think the important thing to note is that the district looks at these results every year and fine-tunes our processes in order to improve and expand upon those things. So I appreciate the data analysis opinion that was rendered, and I agree with it. But I think really the message for me is and continues to be, continual improvement, continual rigor around the area of inquiry, and I liked a number of the ideas that were presented here. So thank you for the report. Perennially. I was not aghast. So that takes us now to item number 8. Second review of a new policy, the Student Use of Information Technology Policy. Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
So you recall 2 weeks ago when we presented the policy to you initially, Board Member Barnes had a specific question that warranted the need for legal review. And so we did that. And so what I'll do is I'll include that as part of the overall discussion. And when we get to that point, I'll call it out. But there are a few other things that I would call to your attention as well. So if you would just look at page 2, you'll see in yellow, it's highlighted. This is an addition. Staff reserve the right to adjust and assign technology resources accordingly. And this is in the context of district information technology and the resources therein are of a limited nature. And so it was advised that a caveat be placed in there that staff reserve the right to adjust and assign according to the resources that are available. So that's a change. If you look at 7, I'll just read all of 7 and then I'll point out the highlight. Help maintain the integrity of district technology by not engaging in the following activities or those of a similar nature, and by reporting any knowledge of such activity by others, here's the highlight, to a teacher, administrator, or other responsible adult. And it's important that we indicate other responsible adult, because in the event that a teacher and an administrator isn't readily available at the moment that such a thing is observed, then we need to make it clear that the most important thing is to locate a responsible adult and to share that information immediately. If you look to page 3, this is where Board Member Barnes raised a question. So on the latter part of item 2, here's an addition. By bringing and using personal devices on the district's network, students consent to a search of the device as a term and condition of using the network. Now, not every student who comes in with a personal device uses our network, but to the extent that those who do use our network, by using the network, they consent to a search of the device as a term or condition. Now, relating to that, those who don't, number 3, use of personal computers and other technology devices are subject to the Student Use of Information Technology Policy, the District Policy on Pupil Safety and Violence Prevention, Bullying, and school level behavior expectations and discipline codes. Violations of these policies and expectations may result in inspection of such devices. So the change here, the primary change is to, again, if a student is using a device and using a personal device and using a district network, they consent to a search for that purpose. And in those cases where the use of a device not on a personal device and not on our network, but that breach one of the other policies that pertain, that are referenced here, may result in inspection of such devices. The important word is may, not will or does automatically, but may. If you look further down on page 3, it relates to what I was just describing. It's an addition. Use social, this is under the student use of social media. Students must use social media for school-related purposes in a manner consistent with the expectations set forth in this policy. So, in other words, the other guiding policies, the student conduct, discipline, and due process, the student violence and prevention, all of those policies are applicable here, and this is just a reference that this covers that. On page 4, the label Code of Conduct and Prohibited Activities has been highlighted because that entire section has been moved to the back of the policy, indicating that that the entire policy is governed by this. So that's a change. Also, all students using district information technology, highlighted in yellow, shall comply with the following rules of conduct and must understand that just because you can access or do something doesn't mean you should. That was just a request to clarify a previous statement that says just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So it's just an attempt to clarify that. And then finally, the final change, do not access or attempt to access files, folders, or devices of others, either deliberately or accidentally, such as when a user does not log out of a computer or application unless authorized to do so. So essentially it's just saying that if a person uses a computer and steps away and someone steps in, they're not authorized to use what's there or to review or to look. So these are the highlighted changes are those that were suggested by council and reflect, I think, specifically Board Member Barnes' concern that she raised a few weeks ago. That was brought up directly to council.
Great. Any questions? Mr. Snyder.
So today, or when this policy takes effect, how do students access the network resources from a personal device? Is it through wireless, hardwired?
It could be that, yes.
Okay. So the question is when you provide them the methodology to access, are you... Well, password wasn't my point. I mean, you can password protect or you not. But the key is before you can use it, many times if you use like a hotels or even at work, there are terms of usage you must accept before you use it. And I would imagine that bringing up a page even on a smartphone with the terms of use, at least the sort of the way you had them described earlier, might be important because then they have to hit the accept before they go ahead and use it. It would be a good way to at least make them aware of what some of the higher level terms are of this. But that's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Vice Chair Barnes.
It's actually, I won't even go into it in detail in my subcommittee report, but the New Hampshire School Boards Association did have a one of the districts to a proposed resolution, and it's specifically about, it was by Governor Wentworth Regional School District, about passing encouraging our legislature in Concord to pass legislation that establishes a positive and safe media environment for children, resulting in less accessibility to children and youth in things like violent content, video games, movies, and TV, and provide new sources of revenue and/or initiates programs. So again, that making money off the networks. So it sounds like something. It's a greater initiative, and we are seem to be ahead of the curve because the state obviously is looking to make it a wider communicated platform in the next couple of months. But it's definitely something that a lot of districts are struggling with, and having obviously the NHSBA behind it does give it a lot more brevity. But you were hitting it right as we were the other night, so it's something just to let you know your timeliness.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? When we last read the policy, I think a number of us had noted what a strong policy it was for a first reading, and as I look at the amendments that have been made, it's only, in my mind, made it stronger. My favorite line from it, and perhaps it's because I can hear Director Nancy Rose's voice in saying this, I might be wrong, but just because you can access and do something doesn't mean you should. I believe I've heard her say that at least a dozen times, and to see it codified in the policy is great. But I think this is even stronger than after the last reading. So thank you for the work on it.
Thank you. You know Nancy Rose well, because that is exactly
It's exactly what she would say.
And she, yeah. Thank you.
Superintendent.
So my question would be, would you want this put on the consent then for December 1st, or do you wish to have more deliberation on it?
Before we discuss that, it looks like Student Representative Crowley has something to say.
Sorry, I'm a little late. But,
no worries.
So
Better
I was
late than
reading
never.
through this, and from a student's perspective, I know my teachers do a very good job implementing this and making sure that we are doing the right thing on the devices that the school provides for us, such as computers. When I access the Google Drive for my English class or Edmodo and sites such as that, they really stress the importance of being safe on the internet and also handling ourselves appropriately as well. But I think it's important to stress also that this doesn't just apply to school devices. We also have to bring our responsibility on the internet to our personal devices inside school too. So I absolutely agree with this, and I think we should educate the students more about their personal responsibility instead of just public responsibility with public property.
Wonderful. Very well said. And I appreciate the fact that you spoke up. Better late than never. Based on what everyone at the table has said, including Ms. Crowley, I have not heard request for any revision to this. So is everyone okay with it going on consent for the next meeting? See some head shaking. Okay. Right. So yes, please. Let's put it on consent. Thank you. And that then takes us to item number 9 on tonight's agenda, review of board's charge to the Planning and Building Committee on October 20th, 2014. I will invite to the table Planning and Building Committee Chair, Mr. Rich Hendricks, and I believe perhaps we may have Vice Chair.
He's at another meeting downstairs right now.
Gage Perry, who's in another meeting downstairs. In your packet, you will see that we included the minutes from the October 20th meeting where we generated the charge for the Planning and Building Committee. And at that time, what was discussed was the fact that we had a Planning and Building Committee report that was a little bit dated in terms of when it was originally pulled together. We recently contracted with NESDEC to do a space utilization. Hi, Gage. Welcome. Do you want Mr. Rothaus to join you as well? No? Just here in support? Wonderful. Welcome. No worries. Just beginning. So we received a NESDEC report that included enrollment projections and as well a space utilization study. The report offered the district, I think, some useful information in terms of a different way of speccing out capacity and maximum capacity, and looking at student projections and what you would need in a building at any point in time. The area where the report was lacking in terms of the board's perspective, and it wasn't because NESDEC didn't do what we asked, it wasn't part of their scope, was in terms of cost estimation of using perhaps some existing space in the buildings at either JMUS or the middle school to accommodate the buildings that we're looking to retire and place into those spaces. Additionally, some of the pros and cons of doing those projects probably weren't fully enumerated. I know discussions have happened since that meeting related to using the middle school, that upper area of the back of the middle school, as office space. And one thing NESDEC didn't note was what the traffic patterns would be within the school if you were to do that. Right now you've set up a school that's in a shape of a W as opposed to a figure 8, and it's going to be more difficult to navigate. The one thing that the NESDEC report seemed pretty clear on, however, was that even using outdated and perhaps incorrect figures, their assessment was that the cost of the two projects are probably going to come in over and above what the cost of the new building was. And so what this board discussed at our table was asking the Planning and Building Committee to take the work that had previously been done, take the NESDEC report, update the existing report, bring it up to date, to current. There were things that looked at lease spaces as options in the original report that, the market has probably changed, that are worth another look. Look at those proposed projects and let's see if we can't come up with a better cost, so that essentially we can be sure that when we put forward a project for a new central office special services building, we've got all of our T's crossed, our I's dotted, and that we've got a solid case for doing so. And so I know Planning and Building has met since that meeting. I received a request from Chairman Hendricks if it would be okay, and it was more than okay. I welcomed the opportunity to have a discussion between Planning and Building and the board as it relates to this important piece of work. As I think one of the town councilors said at a recent town council meeting, the buildings that we're currently using for the superintendent's office are, and I quote, deplorable. And he told the district we need to do something about them. And so with that as sort of the charge, we know we need to do something about them. Everyone in this room knows we need to do something about them. Let's discuss what it is we need to do in order to move this forward. Is that a decent intro, Rich?
That's a very good introduction. It's like the whole first page of my thoughts and ideas here.
Oh, sorry.
So I'll make this brief. Yeah, I'll make this brief. Thank you for letting us come. The two things we want to accomplish, or I wrote down tonight, was just that, going over what you can expect from us. Hopefully, I think we're targeted beginning of January. And that is a revision to the original 2010 report. At this point, obviously it's 4 years old. We are bringing in a realtor to explain to us what could be available in terms of leasing, possibly even buying, what the current costs are. They've certainly gone up. Commercial real estate never really had a problem. I mean, there's been nothing but building. So unfortunately, those costs we don't expect to see go down. We are going to reply to the 2 suggestions that were made in the NESDEC report. The special services they put into the middle school, and the administration offices they put into the James Mastercall Upper Elementary School. And we've been charged to getting costs of those and what the impacts of those will be. And as you mentioned, we kind of glossed over this on past presentations, but we will come up with what are we going to do with those 2 existing houses, whatever the cost may be of what we recommend. If it's demolition, well, that's fine. What will that cost? I do caution you that we do believe both buildings have some form of asbestos in them. I know the blue building does. I don't know about the green one. And then we'll find the current costs of what it is that, whatever it is we propose in the configuration. What we'll try to do is make it more visual. I think our report before tended to be more of a thesis report. I mean, it was very elegant, it was very well put together, but when you start explaining particularly impacts on existing schools, it's a whole lot easier to look at a map and just go through step by step how visually the middle school proposal, you've got people literally, instead of going out 20 feet to this, that will literally go around the entire building. And one of the problems we had when we recommended, actually it was kind of the opposite, the special services possibly going into the upper elementary school, you've shut off an entire corner of the building. I think what people have to understand is this is a closed, as Johnny Carster would say, hermetically sealed environment. Right. You can't, we've got, superintendent loves kids, not necessarily 8 hours a day going through her office. Special services has some very unique circumstances that they have to have security, confidentiality. We could bring Mr. Fabrizio and go through those. So it's not just, they've got to be separate. Yeah. However, when you put them in a school building, they've got to be accessible when the fire alarm goes off. And, you kind of say, well, what's the big deal of that? Well, particularly in the special services, that can be a huge deal. So these are just some of the things we'll bring up. And like I say, a little more visualization. The second thing is more what we'd like to see, the board, more of a joint effort, quite frankly. We did do a lot of presentations, and we didn't really really think anything of it. I mean, we had put the work into it. We knew the answers. I mean, it was kind of like you expect us to, I say we're the research and development. So, go for them for the answers. We really had no problem with that. But I think it became clear to us we need more board input. Yeah. This is not a planning and building thing. It is the board that puts it through to the voters. So, a little bit more interaction. We'd like to do a video. We'd like to do an open house. For those who can't do the open house, or it's filled to capacity by fire code, we can do a video and show people what each building is like. It's not the type of, honestly, it's not a type of building many people go to. You don't want to go being called by the superintendent's office. I hope. So, having said that, we'd like to have the board attend and get invited to PTO meetings. Try to spread the word to as many people. Try to answer as many questions. Try to, is there a misconception? Even this report, which had some phenomenal information, they did get an older report and used the figures. But in any case, a little more visualization is what we would definitely stress this time around. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. So again, this is, there's nothing to really give you per se. This is what we're expecting. This is what we're working on. We've got the realtor coming. We're looking at drawing some things up, looking, how to do the videos. What do we really want to present? But more to come to you and say, this is and has to be a joint effort of getting this message out this year. It's a little bit different. So, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, and say, what are your ideas as to what you'd like to see in joint work or things?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to the board in a second, and I would share with you the fact that not too long after the vote, April before last, where we got the majority but not the supermajority needed for the bond, the board did some introspection at this table and came up with a number of the ideas that you had. One was that since it was the Planning and Building Committee's report related to the warrant article item, we allowed and relied on Planning and Building to make the case, and that not enough was done from the board's position to really push the warrant article, and there was a commitment made to take more ownership, that you provide us with the information, but it's ultimately our project, and we noted that. Over the last year, we looked at the town and what the town had done as it related to the highway garage, and the idea of the open house is something a number of us as well have discussed. While perhaps you don't want to get called to the superintendent's office, I know from various folks who are either coaching in the district and need to go in order to get their fingerprinting done, or volunteers who have to go in, go down those stairs, see the conditions that people work in. They comment on it, and I think a visit to the buildings, whether in person or by video, would be hugely important to stress the need. And then I think lastly, as the board moves the process forward, pictures and I think a concise business case, right? It's one thing to have the report. It's another thing to have, here's the situation, here's what we're looking at long term as it relates to this setup. Here are the options. Here's why we recommend this option, and have that be fully detailed so that we can make it as clear and simple for people to understand and digest. And then you've got all five of us, I think, with that ammunition in hand, ready, willing, and able to explore avenues to making sure we get this done. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so I'm sorry, I've spoken too much. I'll open it up for comment. Vice Chair Barnes.
Well, first and foremost, I think you're painfully aware that two of us have actually sat on Planning and Building as committee members before we were on the board, or between our board stints in the case of Davis. But obviously, been in the trenches with you on that. Obviously, I was earlier on, but we know this has been a long-term initiative, and I think the board has backstory as well that we can sell with this. Andy being the current member of the Planning and Building Committee as a board liaison, obviously has the day-to-day voice as well. But I think we all have seen the work you do and realize that we can absolutely advocate it. You have mentioned parent-teacher groups, and the district has a district parent group. So basically, all the PTO presidents meet with Marge 4 times a year, and I'm actually the school board liaison to that.
Well, there you
so
go.
It's one-stop shopping. So something to consider. Okay. They're not meeting again until January, though. We met in November, but it's still something as we're talking about between now and
you've
deliberative
got
session.
the 4 leaders, but I don't know, would it be better if you talk to each group, because now instead of addressing it to Marge, Thornton's Ferry person, I have everyone here. I mean, I could see going to that leadership meeting for that particular reason and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to come to your individual meetings. Is that more?
Absolutely. Open the doors of communication, because you have at least the primary contacts. They're the people that have your email lists, by the way, to all the parents that are on their distributions. So, and they do communicate directly through that in their Facebook pages. So it's a good start of a communication plan. So it's something I'm just, since you brought it up, I'm throwing it back that there's a resource here. Absolutely. And I mean, the other thing is we should be advocating with you. You're right. There's a lot we can do as far as communication. Our website did have your plan, definitely authored by the Planning and Building Committee. Something Chris said is we need to take ownership of it, but I definitely think it's got to be more collaborative. I'd hate to take your work and sell it, but I want to kind of co-sell it with you. Definitely, you're doing our business development. We just need someone to seal the deal. So really, as far as the back work, the things that I talked about, in this charge last time we met was you had a lot of information that was already in the NASDAQ report, or you had the information already and that was put in the NASDAQ report. At the end of that meeting, you talked about some of even the inaccuracies, things like ventilation and how the cost went up $200,000. So I think we need to take your report, take the NASDAQ report. I'm not sure we're going to get edits to the NASDAQ report. I'm assuming what we got is what we have. So we need to just kind of make some, what you would call appendices, that are the ownership of the district to that report. And maybe that's where you can start helping as well. Because, there's things that just weren't right in the first place, like that $200,000 difference. So, but in the same token, you're right. I do think that we need to co-sell this. But we need your help. I know, and whatever we can do to collaborate with you, you tell us what you need. And, bring your ideas either to us through Andy, any request if you are at events, if you have, Q&A, whatever we can do to help you sell this as, a board, we're willing to do. But we want you to get credit for doing the lion's share of the research, because you do, and you do a fantastic job.
I appreciate it, and I thank that. But like something like the video, Gage and I can, do a good job, but
We have a video
one of you
teacher.
with the board, with the board, something like that. You need this. It's more inclusive.
Right.
It's like, appreciate. We did the work, but again, this is as far as we go with it. You're the ones who tell the voters this is why we want it. We're going to put it on the ballot. It's going to be a warrant article. Blah. It's the board that makes those decisions. We don't. We just say, here's a recommendation. You tweak it. I like it. Blah blah blah, and move on. So this is why it's as you said and I remember after the last vote, we need to step up a little bit. So just a couple of things I came up with. What I'm looking for is maybe you've got an idea sitting there going, and it could be 2 weeks now. It doesn't have to be tonight. But gee, here's a thought. But just you and the connection to PTO, that's huge. Yeah. That seems so simple, but that's huge to us.
So, excellent. Thanks.
All set.
So far.
Ms. Gualiumi.
And I think the video is a great idea, especially if you can combine it a little bit with some of the business plan case study information, like Chris was saying, where it really gives you, let's say, a snapshot that the voter needs to be able to make an educated decision. And if that's hosted, in certain places that are, publicly available, and, we're in a click world, so it's like if someone can easily get to that video, kind of get the summary, the high level points about it, see a quick tour like you see when you go, look at houses, for example, where you can kind of do the click and turn around. I think that can be a very powerful tool. And although I don't think anyone wants to buy that house. But anyways, yes. So thanks so much.
My follow-up to that is excellent input. You just talk about information technology. This represents the school district through the school board. Can you YouTube? Can you Facebook? What limit do you, is there limits to, it's great I throw this up on YouTube and you're sitting here going, whoa, Rich, where's the sign off on this one? So that would be something we'd be looking at. Certainly it'll be on, I guess, Channel 21 here, but where else can it go, and is there any problems if that, we thought about coming up with a little website, something. So that would be some little bit of direction, but we'll certainly have to report to it. So appreciate that. Thank you.
That's great. Mr. Schneider, our liaison to the Planning and Building Committee.
So I'll say to Rich and to Gage, although Gage wasn't at the last meeting, I told you that there would be people who have marketing and business acumen here that would have some ideas that want to support this. We've talked a lot, about the concept not only of the due diligence, but it's our responsibility to market and promote and make sure it's there. I know, just to share with the board, that I'm sure these guys cringe when I walk in the room because I keep pressing. Don't assume that what the data you had before is valid. Make sure it's refreshed. Look at the leasing. Look at the buying. when you if you decide the right thing to do is to get rid of the blue house and you want to pave it and put up a parking lot like the old song used to say, you got to put the cost in there because that's part of the whole plan. So I'm pushing them to really answer the questions that we all got from voters and constituents when it didn't pass the last time. A lot of questions about, well, why don't you lease? It's got to be more cost effective. Why don't you? And if the data was there, then it means that we just didn't make it available. So to get to Cindy's point, to put it on a website, to make it visible so people can very easily consume and digest the information, that's what we need to do. But the most important part is getting the data that we can then utilize. So the data about the, what the current real estate market is, what the options are, and what the cost truly is. The options that were laid out by NASDAQ, find out if they're feasible, what the costs are, and then get a refresh of the cost of the new building proposal for us to really understand. So my role is to sort of bring back and forth between, and I certainly will act as that. So if any board member has anything that between now, your next meeting is a week from tonight on the 24th. So they'll be talking about sort of the steps and the logic and the logistics. I think real estate, we'll have the discussion then. Anybody on the board has anything, feed them through me, and I'll make sure they get into that next meeting. So,
Great. Any other comments? Oh, okay. The one thing I would add, and I think, I know Vice Chair Barnes was getting at this. Three of you are here tonight, and I hope that you can convey to the other members of the committee. I know that this topic has been a focus for the Planning and Building Committee for probably a dozen years. And in addition to that, a number of the people who are on the committee today were on the committee a dozen years ago addressing this issue and are very committed to solving the problem. And so I would want to convey the districts and the community's sincere thanks for continuing to focus on this issue. The board is committed to trying to get this done. It was only 2 years ago in all those 12 years that it was seriously put on the ballot for a vote. And again, we had a majority of the town agree with it. We needed more than that, and that's what our focus is going to be, is to push it over the top. And so, on behalf of the board, I want to thank the Planning and Building Committee for, continuing to kind of push this through. I know it's got to be frustrating to have looked at this problem for as long as we have and to try to get the rest of the town to recognize it. But I think that's what we're committing to do, is we recognize that's our challenge. Is we got more than half of them to recognize it. We just need a few more than that.
No, I appreciate it very much. Like I said, it's just there were a couple loose ends, and we it's okay, yeah, like the demolitions and things. We just kind of said, oh, well, we'll do this. But there's a cost to it, and what are you going to do with them? And key I think was visualization. Right. Not only do you not want to go there, nobody really knows what those buildings are. They've probably passed them for 12 years and never ever really thought, what are those things? So, just a little more data will go a long, long way.
Yeah. Thank you. We're looking forward to it. Appreciate your coming tonight too, and the late hour. Thanks for coming up, Gage. Sorry to pull you from down there. So that takes us to item number 10 on tonight's agenda, review of final draft of educator performance and evaluation model. We'll look to our representative on the EPEC committee, Mr. Powell, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Mark McLaughlin, who is chairing the effort.
Thank you. I know everybody missed Mark speaking during the last presentation, so I figured I'd bring him on and let him finish out the night with us. What you have in your packets is the final copy of the rubric, and I felt it was important to bring this to you to see it at this point, because this is where the biggest opportunities for change were available or were pointed out to the EPEC group. feedback was gathered during the pilot last spring from both educators and evaluators, and EPEC was committed to seeing this through. We did not just want to hand it off and say, all right, have at it. We have a vested interest in this, and we wanted to make sure that there were any significant concerns that we had a chance to address them before it went too much further. So the committee met a few times. My subcommittee actually met at least 3 times that I can think of as far as putting the rubrics together, tweaking them. There were some very, very good suggestions about layout, some questions about wording. It was good to be able to sit and go through the whole thing again. Training for the evaluators was delivered last week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Mark can speak more to that in just a second. And the presentation of the rubric will be going to the educators next month in December. I want to make it very clear that it is a presentation. It's not any sort of a delivery or anything else. This is basically us giving it to the educators to say, this is what we're proposing, this is what you're going to be reviewing, this is what you're going to be voting on. And that's that. Here's your chance to ask questions about it. And hopefully, not hopefully, the plan is for the board and the MTA to have a vote on it come February, if I'm not mistaken, so that we can move forward on it. So we had a very productive final meeting on, when was it? Last Monday, yeah. On last Monday, we got a lot done, and it was kind of nice. We figured it was 2 years and a couple days that last Monday night's meeting was from the first time that we met, and it was really nice to be able to, see it come full circle. So with that, I'll ask Mark to jump in and hit some highlights, and then we can answer any questions.
I'm happy to do that. I might just say I think Davis has been kind of modest about the amount of time that his group met because there are many, many, many hours that were put into the revision of this, and so it's just important to note that. And as he said, after the pilot happened and then the educators got a chance and the evaluators got a chance to provide feedback, then all of that was taken very seriously, and those results were incorporated into the revision that you see here. So it was a lot of work that they put into this. Rather than going through item by item, what I think I might tell you is that the feedback from the pilot came roughly in 3 forms. There were three types of feedback. One had to do with, in the original rubric, there was a sense that the language in each descriptor was kind of wordy, and that it was in a narrative form, and it was kind of hard to sift through. So one of the requests was that the committee review and try to streamline the language. And so you'll see now it's still, it's a description, it's a rubric, so it has to be specific, but it's really bulleted now, and it's much sharper and more concise and not in the narrative form that it was before. That's one thing. Another thing that characterized the change was that in the performance indicators between, let's say, highly effective and effective, there was language that was intended to differentiate between the two, for instance, like consistently versus routinely. But some of the feedback was that though people understood what those words mean, they didn't really understand what they meant in terms of differentiating between one performance indicator and another. And so they asked if that could be tightened up. And so a lot of effort went into trying to do that, to make it very connected from highly effective to basic that does not meet standard, that there should be a natural flow, and language needed to be concise and precise and follow that logic. The third thing was that non-classroom teachers, non-classroom educators like nurses, guidance counselors, art educators, music educators, wondered whether the rubric sufficiently covered their domains, their areas of work. And though we felt strongly that it did originally, for instance, planning and preparation refers to all professionals. Nurses plan and prepare, professional responsibilities, and so on. However, we took them at their word, and so the rubric subcommittee and EPEC in general went back and made sure that all of the domains and all of the components of each domain could logically be seen as connecting to all staff rather than just the classroom teacher. So in a nutshell, those are the changes that are in front of you that represent the final version of the rubric that you see tonight. And so we move ahead, and we'll look forward to presenting the other parts of it to you in late January or February as we come to closure. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any questions from the board? Vice Chair Barnes.
Knowing that you have the second round, and you said you were pretty much going to be rolling it out again like a pilot, or are you going to just do a true rollout at this point?
No, nothing. There won't be another pilot.
Okay.
No, there's no. The only rollout that could happen would be if the board were to approve the tool and the process that will be presented to it in February, and if the MTA after that would approve it as well, then it would constitute a rollout. So we take nothing for granted now. We're trying to use our time wisely to expose our evaluators and our educators to this, just to continue to foster an understanding, and greater understanding about what this is and what it has evolved to. But nothing is for sure, and we continue to just work until we get to that point where people can see the tool and the process and make an informed decision about its appropriateness for them.
Right, and you did have MTA representation on the committee as well.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
I would like to thank you and the committee, and in particular the parent volunteers who signed up for a much shorter commitment and who have stuck it out through. Mr. Kevin Bobbitt and Ms. Trish Swanger in particular have continued working on this well beyond what we originally scoped out. The whole committee has, and I appreciate the effort. The pilot, as we said at this table, was successful in that we got areas for refinement, we got good quality feedback, and the fact that committee has worked it and is rolling out something that I think people will see their feedback being addressed in the revision is huge, and so thank you to all of you for that work. And that takes us to item number 11, ongoing preparation for development of the 2015-2016 budget. The superintendent and I will update you on this. I'll take a second to talk through the calendar, and then do you want to add anything, or would you like to present the calendar? Okay. Just correct me if I go astray or if for some reason I leave something out. As we have done in years past, we have arranged a meeting of myself, the Budget Committee Chair, and the Superintendent pre-budget season to try to plan out a calendar and iron out the way that things will work in terms of questions, submittals, and points of contact, and how things work. I think last year with Ms. Walyumi as chair of the Budget Committee, I think we had an extremely smooth year, and I credit both her leadership and the pre-planning that we did together for having had that work out to be such. So this year was no different. Recently, the superintendent and I met with the Budget Committee chair for this year, which is Mr. Stan Heinrich, and tried to line up a calendar, which we have here. With one exception, we have a tentative date in the calendar, and I'll explain why that's tentative. And so you've got it in your packets, but here is the planned calendar. On Monday, December 1st, the overview of the proposed budget will be presented by the superintendent to the school board. and we will receive our budget books. On the 2nd, those materials will be made available for the Budget Committee. December 15th, Monday, we will begin department budget hearings at our table, not dissimilar to what we did last year, where we heard from maintenance and some of the other areas with bigger ticket items. Similarly, and that completes our work for 2014. On January 5th, 2015, a Monday, we will have a similar department budget hearing at our meeting. And then on Wednesday, January 7th, we will have a dedicated meeting for the budget hearing, as we will on Monday, January 12th. We'll have another budget hearing and approval of the 2015-2016 budget. Within those time periods, Budget Committee liaison meetings will commence or can be scheduled anywhere from January 6th through January 16th. The tentative date on this calendar is Tuesday, January 13th for the first Budget Committee meeting with a review of department budgets. And the reason for this is that we've been iterating through some dates. One of the requests that came out of the Budget Committee in their planning sessions were that some members felt that having all of the department reviews on a single night, which they did last year, I think the meeting was about a 1 or 2 hour meeting tops, but they got through all of the departments, that having 2 nights of department meetings would be preferred. And so where we're challenged is just how to squeeze in that second meeting, and we've been going back and forth on dates there. So tentatively, we need to affirm this with Mr. Heinrich, but we've proposed Tuesday, January 13th as a potential date for that first review of department budgets. Then the Budget Committee would have their second review of department budgets on January 27th, which is a Tuesday rather, and they've scheduled a Thursday, January 29th snow date in case any of those prior dates are missed for snow. February 3rd, a Tuesday, they would have a Budget Committee meeting and review warrant articles and conduct their working session on the budget. They've scheduled February 5th, another Thursday, as a snow date. Tuesday, February 10th, as a Budget Committee meeting and public hearing and final action on the budget and warrant articles. And then a final snow date of Thursday, February 12th, if needed. Of note, February 6th, which is a Friday, is the last day for petitioned bond articles. And Tuesday, February 10th, 2015, is the last day for petitioned warrant articles. Did I miss anything?
You didn't miss anything. I just have a couple of things to add. One of the difficulties when we first got together was that both of us had down January 20th as a very important date. That was the date for the first Budget Committee hearing, which is a Tuesday night. And it just so happens that the school board has a formal meeting that night because Martin Luther King Day happens on the 19th. So we have that day off, and the 20th had already been scheduled, if you will, as a formal board meeting. So when we sat in session, we said we've really got a conflict here because the board has already taken a stand on January 20th. It needs to have that meeting, and as a matter of fact, we won't be in Town Hall on that night. We'll be in the Merrimack High School cafeteria, already squared away, because I believe the planning board is meeting that night here. So we walked away from the table knowing that January 20th was just a difficult date, knowing that the Budget Committee had committed as a committee to Tuesday nights being their best night to come together, with the idea that we would kind of walk away and perhaps come back with something that would work for both. So I am pleased to tell you that since Chris and I were together, that Stan Heinrich has agreed to January 13th as being their first hearing date. The only thing that that does, as the chair points out, is it just means that if possible, it would be great if the board could finalize the budget on the 12th, because one of the most important things, I think, for all concerned is that the administration gives the budget to the board. It then becomes yours. The board finalizes the budget and gives it to the budget committee. It becomes theirs. And if, in fact, there's an overlap where it hasn't cleanly been given over, that just causes potential confusion. Not that it couldn't happen, but it just might create confusion. So I think if we utilize the board meetings that you already have in place, as the chair points out, December 15th and January 5th, in addition to those other dates, I think you'll have plenty of time to deliberate, because I would just point out, we've been talking about budget development since July, if you think about it. And that's been done on purpose, and it's very different than it was 5 years ago, meaning you know about the tech plan, you know a lot about maintenance, you know about the capital improvement plan. None of that's going to change. You're going to see it in the budget. We're just going to highlight it or put more flesh on the bone, but it's not like there are going to be a lot of surprises. So that's why I think it's so doable. That's the only thing I would add.
Thank you for the late-breaking news and the clarification of the background. In short, you know, looking at last year's process, we had until what the equivalent of the 20th this year. I forget which date, whether it was the 19th or 21st last year, which was a major adjustment from years past, where we had a process that had us approving the budget on January 5th, right, which meant that all of our work was done as a board in a month's time and over a holiday to culminate with the approval of a budget. And so, you know, with the budget committee looking to get another meeting in and review it, it seems a reasonable accommodation to try to do that, pull back a week from where we were last year to afford them that opportunity while still recognizing we're getting a full extra week beyond what historically we ever would have had. Mr. Schneider.
Just out of curiosity, and this is for Matt, what's the date that the budget has to be given to the state?
The budget has to be given to the state?
Well, I mean,
it's the last day to post a warrant.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, but I know when I was on the budget committee, we always worked backwards from that date to give ourselves some slush time. It's
Yeah.
usually near the end of February or so?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm assuming that probably this date, is it the following Monday or something it has to be given?
It's the last week of February,
Yeah.
Monday.
Okay, so there is wiggle room if, like, we have, like, the polar vortex sets over the top of us. Here, shut up. To do this. So it is. So the last date they've got is February 10th. There is another week in there of fluff in case we need to. Obviously, you want to be aggressive on this to get it done, but
Yeah, but there is time.
Right.
Because depending upon what the budget committee does, you know, sometimes I can correctly predict and have the forms available for signage, and sometimes, you know, I just can't. So there's usually a week in there where we collect signatures after the final hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comment, question? All right. Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to other correspondence. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Okay, seeing none. Comments? Any comments from the board? Seeing none, move on to number 13, new business. Any new business? Move on to number 14, committee reports. Ms. Crowley.
Over the weekend, our Chinese exchange students arrived, and they'll be staying with our host families through Thursday. DECA Week is being celebrated this week at the high school, and they were also featured in the Muscular Dystrophy Association newsletter for their part at the MDA Walk at the Mall of New Hampshire in early September. And next Tuesday, the Student Council-sponsored Hypnotist Show will be held.
Thank you. Ms. Guagliumi, did you have your hand up? Nope. Mr. Schneider. Sorry.
It's good to go down the line just to make sure we're all covered. Right.
Method to my
So, the first is a committee just notification on November 10th, the Planning and Building Committee met. We certainly went in depth, but I will again remind folks if anybody has any input they'd like me to carry back to the Planning and Building, that'll be next Monday, so just let me know.
Great.
The other one is on November 13th, there was a Merrimack Safeguard meeting. One of the interesting things is that as we're now beginning the year 5 through 10, I can never remember, year 6 through 10, there's this, we have to start the process of promoting what we do, beginning sort of the different deliverables that we have to do within Merrimack Safeguard. So what we spent a lot of time at our last meeting reviewing sort of a brochure, set of brochures that we're doing, things that we're going to promote to begin sort of our next step, if you will, to talk about sort of campaign, the Be Responsible Merrimack campaign that we're doing, so sort of the brochures around that. One of the things that we're going to do is the Safeguard group is going to attend the next Chamber of Commerce breakfast that's on December 5th, I believe, that we're going to go and use it as a promotional activity for the Be Responsible Merrimack. So I'll be going as well as other members to sort of raise awareness to that. There's an upcoming survey that's happening. We got an update on some of the social media things. So it's really on the marketing aspect now that we've been approved. And it's also to raise awareness that we did get the grant approved. It's sort of been our little secret and not really shared. So we're certainly working on all the different aspects to do that. And also trying to work on the actual items where we're going to start putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, in terms of the programs that we're going to start, over the coming year. So it's the beginning of a busy season with the Safeguard team.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Vice Chair Barnes.
I have 3. On the 7th, the bus stop committee met based on that email to the district, to the board, and on-site and resolved the request to all party satisfaction. Item number 2, the New Hampshire School Boards Association Executive Committee met on the 11th. On Veterans Day, when we didn't have school by state law, we had a School Board Association meeting instead. So a couple of things. We have a member of our board who's the head of the New Hampshire PTA. She is actually out of the Derry School District, and they reviewed some of their the state New Hampshire PTA conference that they had in Derry a few weeks earlier. So I learned there's New Hampshire PTA, and they do a lot of stuff. So we got legislative updates. Really, a lot of it was the impact of the election, and we're waiting for what the other shoe means to education funding and policy. And legal updates, I guess there have been new guidelines and laws regarding restraint. So, something that they just say, look under the hood of your policies and see where your policy aligns with the law with restraint. But we will be having our delegate assembly on January 10th. So we did meet and vote on the petition warrant articles by the districts, as well as the continuing platforms. So that was, we're good to go. And we did introduce a new member, and I brought my folder because I was going to forget her name. And her name is Janine McLaughlin, spelled differently than yours. And she's from the Conway School District. And she is now doing the North Country. To my fellow board members, we are now getting a monthly bulletin called the New Hampshire School Board Association News Briefs. So it's a new publication that will be coming to you monthly in your emails. It's all basically the stuff new and relevant to education in New Hampshire. So, and finally, Parks and Rec met on the 12th. Basically, we were talking about budget planning, forecasting. With a new director in place, there's long-term and short-term monies that we have to plan for and hope for. There's, leaky roofs to new programs, so, getting the department back up and running, I guess, after, some time without a director, it gives us a lot of demand, and hopefully we'll get some supply to offset that as far as budgeting. The Christmas parade is December 6th, which is a Saturday, which is a new trend for us. We normally have Sunday Christmas parades, and I really blame the Patriots for having to move it, because honestly, we want to make sure the attendance is reasonable for our community. So when the Patriots kick off, a lot of people don't want to miss the game. So the parade will be at 3 o'clock on Saturday the 6th, with a tree lighting at 3:45. So it will end the parade. And in February, we'll be having the Winter Carnival, so always look forward to more updates on that.
Thank you. And this isn't really a committee report unless you consider executive committee a committee. You may recall at a recent meeting that Student Representative Crowley brought up the concern of the new bleachers and their installation, and the negative impacts that had on a number of events, and the need for better communication when planning those types of things with the student body and the school. I want to thank her first for raising the point, and additionally for the invitation that we've received to go to the Student Congress this coming Wednesday morning. Vice Chair Barnes and I will be going with Business Administrator Chevenel and Director of Maintenance, Mr. Tuso, to meet with the Student Congress and to talk about issues such as this. And so we'll talk about that project, and I think we're all very much looking forward to it. So thank you for that invitation.
Thank you for coming. We're very excited to have you. We're looking forward to discussing this more so with you guys.
Wonderful.
Is it going to be in the Little Theater? Okay. Because myself and Nancy Rose met before them prior, and it was an enjoyable experience. And I know I had a meeting to go to, but it was kind of like, I kind of want to stay here and talk, But I'll be looking forward to this too. Thank you.
It'll be wonderful. Mr. Powell.
Can other board members come and watch the roast?
Of course.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, the invitation was extended to all. The challenge I think that I had, since we're talking about the bleachers and the fact that the bleachers is actually a district topic, wanted to avoid the quorum issue and public meeting and posting, and so we were limiting the invitation to the vice chair and myself. But I think if there's no discussion amongst members, that should probably work. Wasn't expecting a roast. That takes us to item number 15, public comments on agenda items. I see no one from the public looking to address us, and so we will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn made by Mr. Powell, seconded by Ms. Gualyumi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. That motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, everyone. Good night.